just back up, just so you know what we're going to cover. I'm going to give an overview, and then we'll hear from several distinguished authors about findings on 3 of the chapters, on benefits, on options, and on finance. I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of an overview. Bert already mentioned the rationale. There have been a lot of studies looking at what is the conceptual basis, what are the trends in green growth, some regional studies, but as yet there had not been a comprehensive analysis of the practical experience, of what's actually happening on the ground, and what can we learn, both good and bad, from that experience to inform and strengthen future planning. And that was the rationale for this effort. Our primary question is to really understand what are the effective approaches for planning, implementation, and monitoring and evaluation that will lead to continuous adjustment and improvement. And we pursued 3 elements of work. First and foremost was to conduct an evidence analysis-based assessment of what practices are working, are gaining traction. And we looked at the impact, the efficiency of measures, how robust the measures were. Obviously, it's not entirely quantitative because a lot of the learning and the implementation is based on stakeholder processes and policy processes. So a lot of the feedback was based on expert opinion and feedback from stakeholders. And we looked at over 60 cases of green growth analysis, planning, and implementation from different levels of government around the world. And that's the heart of the assessment, together with review and synthesis from the literature. And the authors, many of you who you see here, did an amazing job. And so they're really the ones that we need to thank and appreciate for all the work they did on top of their other jobs. In addition to the report, we also then are documenting the results in a variety of products. Starting July 14th, we'll have an online handbook where you can search the report contents and the individual cases, which will be available on a rolling basis starting on that date. And you can search by country, by topic, by sector to find results of greatest interest. And we're also working with a number of institutions on e-learning materials to infuse the findings into training programs, and are delivering training in person with a number of organizations. And fostering use, as I'll get to in a minute, we're working with a number of countries to do seminars with development assistance agencies to incorporate results into their program. As Sam and Bert mentioned, this project was launched in October 2012. I'm deeply grateful to Sam, to Bert, to Jason, and others at GGGI who have been primary sponsors and had the vision to support this work. And it's really been a pleasure to work together. And I also want to highlight Caroline Spencer, who's here with us, who's been instrumental from CDKN in providing support. We had an outstanding project team. Nicola Franca, who's here, was project manager through most of the effort, played a leading role, in Sung Jung Ha and Aaron Park, who are joining remotely from Korea, have done an absolutely incredible job. And of course the authors, and I want to note, in addition to the authors that you see with us here, there's 4 authors in the audience with us today: Denise Welsh, Marcela Jamarillo, Litping Lo, and Celine Herringer. And we greatly appreciate your work and contributions to the effort, and a large number of partners, as Sam and Bert mentioned, and a very active steering committee who gave us good guidance throughout. So the key goal here, of course, isn't just to do a report. It's to promote use of the findings to strengthen green growth planning and implementation around the world. So how are we doing that? One way we're doing that is we're going to individual countries, and we've offered to any country in the world, in partnership with other donors, if you're interested in certain results, let us know, and we'll engage you in a conversation with the authors. That's happened in a lot of countries. Will's working in Rwanda, for example. We just had a team in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We have dialogues ongoing with Indonesia, Sri Lanka, provided assistance to Kenya in advising their climate policy, helped a number of Arab states with their green economy roadmap, Vietnam and Cambodia, and a Mekong effort, and several others. And it's been great to have that dialogue and also learn back from the countries as to what aspects are meaningful to them and how to improve the work going forward. As I noted, we also have some technical resources, an online handbook, collaboration on e-learning, and I welcome other thoughts and ideas. One reason to have this information up here is also to inspire you to have additional suggestions on how can we promote use of the results. We've had a large number of presentations of the draft results. Now starting now, the final results at workshops and events. We'll have several webinars, including one in Spanish for Latin American countries in July. And then another one we'll do for Asian countries. And if you have other suggestions on events where we can share results that would be useful, please let us know. And the other key way we're trying to promote use of the results is to infuse the findings into approaches and tools that international development assistance agencies are undertaking. So we had good meetings a couple weeks ago at GGGI with all their country programs to share the findings, talk about their relevance to the assistance. There's a briefing that authors are doing tomorrow at the United Nations Development Program. I'll be at GIZ later this week. Also with USAID we have a briefing. We're talking obviously to CDKN and others. We're very keen to get your recommendations for further outreach, also further research. We hope that there's an opportunity to deepen the research. This assessment was fairly broad. We went across 9 topics that were identified by stakeholders as priorities. We hope in the future there's an opportunity to go deeper in a few areas and are interested in your thoughts in that regard. Now I wanted to say a few things about the scope and some high-level findings and then turn it over to the authors to get into the meat. So we went through a consultative process with decision makers around the world together with the LEDS, Low Emission Development Global Partnership, LEDS Global Partnership, which had regional workshops and additional surveys to figure out what do decision makers most want to learn about green growth, what do they see as the most important steps and elements, and came up with the 9 topics shown in this diagram here. I'll say a few words about topics that we're not diving into deeply. At the center, of course, is a well-designed planning and coordination process. This includes having strong high-level leadership from the president or prime minister, having a winning coalition. Successful programs have coalitions not only of government but of non-government that can sustain support and interest throughout the process and engage all of the sector agencies and key subnational actors. And third, there's institutionalization of the planning process. There's an intergovernmental committee, there's lead authority in legislation or executive order, other elements such as that. Surrounding this is monitoring and evaluation. And we put it here because it can't be an afterthought. If you want to succeed with a green growth plan and implementation, you have to, from the front, figure out what are your indicators of success and how you're going to measure them and have ownership of those indicators by all of the agencies and make sure there's a process for adjusting and feeding that back in. Absolutely critical to have effective vision, a vision for both transformative change and for near-term results. The governments that have succeeded best are both far-reaching in their scope but also pragmatic and showing progress, and then have specific targets for sectors that the sector agencies or the subnational governments are buying into. We'll hear from Jason on benefits and Will on options. I won't say more about that. Policy design is obviously another critical element. You have to get the price signals and the incentives in terms of changing behavior right. But in addition, there's also some other critical enabling activities that a number of the cases demonstrate. One is workforce development and training. Got to build the human capacity to support the transition to the emerging industries and technologies and practices that are vital for a transition to green growth. And you have to invest in innovation, policies to support innovation, not only in technologies, but also in business models and in community practices. And there's some great examples of policy approaches. We'll hear from Amelie and Sheila on mobilizing investment. Public-private collaboration was another essential key. This chapter looks at a whole range of models, but a couple that really stand out are public-private collaboration to enhance resource management and resource efficiency, to make effective use and valuation of natural assets that countries have. Second is to look at public-private collaboration to increase investment in infrastructure. That's absolutely vital to support the transition to green growth. And the third is on innovation leadership. A lot of the innovation leadership really has to come from the private sector and has to be incentives. integrating action at the national and subnational level is absolutely vital. And this chapter looks at a number of models and approaches for not only how national government can provide support to the subnational government, but how it can learn from and be inspired by action at the subnational level, and how there can be joint action across all levels. And then just a final sort of set, when we looked across the chapters, there's a number of conclusions that we drew from the analysis. And at the high level, a big conclusion is it's really heartwarming to see that there's a growing number of governments around the world that are gaining traction with green growth and are demonstrating that there are substantial benefits, and Jason will get into this more detail, benefits associated with enhancing efficiency and productivity from more efficient resource use, benefits in terms of transitions to new competitive industries and advancing broader macroeconomic goals and job development, and very importantly, benefits in terms of enhanced quality of life, reducing poverty, improving social equity and inclusion through more effective use of natural resources and reduced vulnerability to natural damages. However, at the same time, there still are significant challenges. The governments that succeed best are those that explicitly recognize the trade-offs and that there are transitions that aren't painless and have invested in processes to smooth the transitions and to be honest and direct in tackling those trade-offs. Secondly, it's the governments that are succeeding best are taking an integrated approach. They're not just investing in a set of policies or in a finance strategy, but they're looking also at action at the subnational level, at public-private collaboration. They have rigorous analysis. They have a vision, all the elements that are identified earlier. And third, there's a huge challenge of getting to the scale and at the speed necessary. We're seeing great progress, but if we're going to tackle challenges like climate change, water resource scarcity, and other issues, we need to continue to challenge ourselves to reach for the transformative change and really take the actions necessary to get to the scale and speed needed. Thank you.
Ron, thank you very much. So there's a huge amount of material in this, and I hope you're thinking of some issues, questions, and observations you might want to bring to us. We've got half an hour after the next presentations for open discussion. So for those of you online, I think you can probably already send your questions in, and I'll want to see them popping up in front of me, and we can attempt to answer them in a minute. So please don't hesitate to send your written comments now. And for those of you in the room, if you could hold your observations and comments on what Ron has said. I mean, we're interested to hear about outreach and further research, but certainly your observations on the framework and what that means and your thoughts on that would be welcomed.